I took a job in the forest. The rules are disturbing. The job offer. The ad was simple, almost too simple. Seeking overnight forest ranger. High pay. No experience needed. Must follow the rules. It felt like a scam, but I was desperate. Bills were piling up. My last job had ended in disaster, and I needed to escape the city, even if just for a while. When I called the number listed, a man with a slow, deliberate voice answered. His name was Mr. Grayson, and he wasted no time offering me the position. "You start tomorrow," he said. "Report to Blackwood National Forest, Ranger Station 12, at dusk. The job is easy, just follow the rules." I asked what the rules were, but he only chuckled. "They'll be in the station. Read them carefully. Follow them exactly." Something in his tone made my skin crawl, but I needed the money, so I agreed. I had no idea what I was walking into. The station, Blackwood National Forest, stretched for miles, a dense tangle of ancient trees and forgotten trails. As I drove deeper in, the cell service vanished, and the roads became narrow and cracked. The station itself was small, a wooden cabin nestled between towering pines, with a single bulb flickering on the porch. Inside, I found a single cot, a desk, an old radio, and a stack of papers sitting in the center of the desk. The walls were lined with outdated maps and pinned warnings about wildlife. But the papers were what caught my eye. The rules. Printed in bold, they read, "Rule number 1. Lock the doors and windows before sundown. Rule number 2. Do not respond to voices outside after dark. Rule number 3. If you hear tapping on the windows, do not look out. Rule number 4. Check the radio at exactly 3:15 a.m. Do not acknowledge any voices that are not human. Rule number 5. You may hear footsteps on the roof. Ignore them. They will leave. Rule number 6. If you see a man in a park ranger uniform who does not have a face, shut your eyes and count to 10. He will be gone when you open them. Rule number 7. Do not leave the station between midnight and dawn, no matter what." I read them over and over, my hands shaking slightly. This had to be a joke. But why would someone joke about this? The first night, as the sun dipped below the treetops, I locked the doors and windows as instructed. The silence that followed was absolute, an oppressive quiet that settled into my bones. The air felt thick, heavy, as if something unseen lurked just beyond the tree line. By 11 p.m., I was pacing the small cabin, the weight of the rules pressing into my mind. Every creak of the wooden walls sent my nerves into a frenzy. Then, just past midnight, the knocking began. It was soft at first, barely audible over the rustling leaves outside. Then it grew louder, a slow, deliberate tapping against the window behind me. My breath hitched. "Do not look out." The tapping continued, insistent. It moved to the front door. Knock, knock, knock. I forced myself to stay still, my hands clenched into fists. Do not respond to voices outside after dark. And then a voice. Soft, familiar, terrifying. "Hey, it's me. Let me in." My blood turned to ice. The voice, it was my mother's. But my mother had been dead for 5 years. The unseen. I pressed my back against the wall, my pulse hammering. My mother's voice, her exact voice, continued pleading, whispering my name, telling me she was cold, that she was lost. The door handle rattled. The air felt wrong, like a thick pressure had settled over the cabin. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the papers in my hands. The rules. Follow the rules. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the knocking stopped. The voice faded, leaving only the hum of the wind. I barely had time to catch my breath when a sharp thud echoed from above. Footsteps. Something was on the roof. You may hear footsteps on the roof. Ignore them. They will leave. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to remain still. The steps were slow, deliberate. They scraped against the wooden shingles. Whatever it was, it knew I was here. And then, the most terrifying sound of all, a whisper drifting through the vents. "I see you." The face in the window. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen in place, staring at the door. The radio remained silent. The only sounds the occasional creaks of the cabin settling. Then, just as I thought I might have imagined it all, the room grew colder. The light above flickered. A shadow passed outside the window. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My mind screamed at me to run, to hide, to do anything but sit there like prey. But the rules, the damn rules, kept repeating in my mind. If you see a man in a park ranger uniform who does not have a face, shut your eyes and count to 10. He will be gone when you open them. I saw him, a park ranger, standing just outside the window, and he had no face. The radio's warning. The air felt thick with an unnatural stillness as I sat in the dimly lit ranger station, my mind looping over the bizarre rules pinned to the wall. My first night had passed uneventfully, save for the nagging sensation that I was being watched. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe it was something far worse. I tapped my fingers on the desk, staring at the static-filled radio in front of me. It was old, far older than I expected. The dials were worn, the labels faded, and a deep scratch ran across the speaker like something had tried to claw its way inside. The handbook had explicitly warned me about the radio. Do not respond to any radio calls between 3 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. Ignore any voice that mimics someone you know. I checked my watch. 2:52 a.m. Outside, the trees swayed in the wind, their branches casting long, skeletal shadows on the frosted window. I hadn't seen a single soul since my shift started, and yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was nearby. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., the radio crackled to life. A wave of static filled the room, warping into something almost human. A voice, low, strained, and crackling with interference, called out, "Ranger Post, do you copy?" I stiffened, my hand hovering over the receiver. It was my first instinct to answer. My job was to respond to distress calls, right? But the rule echoed in my mind. Do not respond between 3 o'clock and 3:15 a.m. The voice came again, but this time it was different. "Hey, it's me. It's Jacob. Pick up, man. I need help." Jacob, my best friend. The same Jacob who had died 2 years ago in a hiking accident. Cold sweat trickled down my spine. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at the radio, praying that this was some sick joke. But deep down, I knew better. The voice was wrong. It had the same cadence, the same familiarity, but there was something off, like a song played on a broken record. It stretched words too long, clipped syllables at odd places. "Come on, man. It's cold out here. Let me in." I swallowed hard. The wind outside howled through the trees. Shadows flickered across the window, shifting unnaturally. Something was out there. I clenched my fists, refusing to move. I wouldn't break the rule. Then came the knocking. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks at the door. I nearly jumped out of my skin. My eyes darted toward the entrance, dread pooling in my gut. The station was remote. No one should be here. The radio crackled again, the voice now distorted and pleading. "Why won't you open up? I'm right here, right outside." My breath hitched. The knocks came again, harder this time, shaking the door on its hinges. I reached for my flashlight with trembling fingers, gripping it like a lifeline. I wouldn't open that door. I couldn't. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the knocking stopped. The radio fell silent. I sat there, motionless, for what felt like an eternity. My watch read 3:16 a.m. I had made it. I exhaled shakily, muscles aching from how tightly I had been clenching them. But as relief washed over me, I made the mistake of glancing out the window. And that's when I saw it. A figure stood at the edge of the tree line, barely illuminated by the weak porch light. It was tall, unnaturally tall, and it had no face. My stomach turned to ice. It was just standing there, motionless, watching me. A faint whisper slithered through the air, though I couldn't tell if it came from the trees, the radio, or my own mind. "See you tomorrow, Ranger." Then, as if it had never been there at all, the figure melted into the darkness. The faceless thing in the woods. The rest of my shift passed in suffocating silence. I didn't sleep, not after what I saw. The moment I closed my eyes, I felt like I would hear that voice again, whispering from the radio, beckoning me to open the door. Instead, I sat in the station's single wooden chair, gripping my flashlight and staring at the door like it might burst open at any second. Every creak of the wind, every rustle in the trees outside sent my nerves into overdrive. By the time the sun finally started bleeding through the canopy, I was beyond exhausted, my body aching from the tension. I checked my watch. 6:42 a.m. My shift was over. I practically threw myself outside, desperate for daylight. The forest was bathed in a golden morning glow, but I knew better than to trust it. The trees were still, too still. No birds chirped. No insects hummed. It was as if the entire world had been muted. A reminder of the thing I had seen standing at the tree line. I locked the station door behind me, the keys cold in my shaky hands. I needed answers. The other ranger. The ranger cabin was half a mile down a narrow dirt path, nestled between the pines. I had passed it when I first arrived, but hadn't thought much of it. Now, as I approached the worn wooden steps, my gut twisted with unease. Something was wrong. The door was slightly open, creaking as the wind nudged it against the frame. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to pretend I never saw it. But my curiosity and desperation won out. I pushed the door open. The inside was almost identical to my station. Same layout, same aging furniture, same damn radio. But the smell, God, the smell. It was rancid, thick in the air, like something had been left to rot. And then I saw it. The chair by the radio was overturned, and on the floor, half hidden behind the desk, was a body. I staggered back, my stomach lurching. He was wearing a ranger uniform, just like mine, but his face was completely gone. Not just missing, not mutilated, erased. Like his skin had been stretched smooth, with no mouth, no nose, no eyes. A faceless corpse. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. The air was thick with decay, the metallic tang of blood, but there was no blood on the body. Just stiff, lifeless skin pulled over where a face should have been. A deep, suffocating sense of dread settled in my chest. Then, the radio clicked on. Static. I whipped around, staring at the old speaker as it crackled and hissed. "Ranger Post, do you copy?" My heart slammed against my ribs. The same voice. The same one that had called me last night. But this time, I wasn't alone in hearing it. Because from outside the cabin, something knocked. 3 deliberate knocks. I froze. My breath hitched to my throat. The corpse on the floor suddenly didn't feel so dead. I bolted. I ran out of that cabin as fast as my legs could carry me, back toward my truck, not stopping, not looking back. As I jumped into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut, my hands were still shaking. The cabin loomed in my rearview mirror, the open door like a gaping mouth. Then, in the trees behind it, it was there, tall, still, watching, no face, just standing among the trees, waiting. And then it did something that made my stomach turn to ice. It lifted its hand and waved. The truth about the rules. I didn't stop driving until I reached the small ranger outpost where I had first been given my assignment. The old man who hired me, Bill, was still there, sitting at the desk like nothing was wrong. I slammed the door open, panting. He didn't even look surprised. "I see you met it," he said, lighting his cigarette. I stared at him, my hands still trembling. "What the hell is that thing?" Bill exhaled a slow stream of smoke, his face unreadable. "There's more than one," he said. "They've been here longer than any of us." I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "The faceless ones." I shook my head, trying to process it. "That thing was at my station last night, and now there's a dead ranger in the other cabin." Bill flicked his cigarette into an ashtray. "Ain't dead." The air went still. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Bill leaned forward, his gaze heavy. "They don't kill you, kid. They take you." A deep chill crawled up my spine. "The body you saw, that wasn't your first warning. That was your replacement." I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. Bill leaned back in his chair. "You follow the rules. You might just make it through your contract. You don't." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Then you become the next faceless ranger." A sickening realization settled in my gut. This wasn't just a job. It was a trap. And now, whether I liked it or not, I was part of it. No one leaves the forest. The truth sat heavy in my chest, suffocating. They don't kill you. They take you. Bill's words echoed in my head as I sat in my truck outside the outpost, staring at the tree line. The morning sun had fully risen, bathing the forest in golden light, but it didn't feel warm. It felt like a lie, because I knew what was hiding in there. The faceless ones. I should have left. I should have turned the key in the ignition and driven as far from this godforsaken forest as I could. But I didn't, because I knew, deep down, they wouldn't let me. A warning comes too late. I needed answers. Bill was my only lead, and I wasn't about to let him brush me off again. I stormed back into the outpost, slamming the door behind me. "Start talking," I snapped. "You knew what was out there. You knew about the rules. And you still sent me out there alone." Bill didn't even look up from his cigarette. "I gave you the rules, didn't I?" he muttered. I clenched my fists. "That's not good enough. What the hell are they?" Bill exhaled smoke, rubbing his temples. "They're part of the forest. Always have been. The government keeps this place quiet. Make sure no one builds. No one wanders too deep. But they still need people to watch." He fixed me with a tired stare. "That's where we come in." My stomach turned. "We don't protect the forest, kid. We protect people from it." I sank into the chair across from him, my hands trembling. "The other ranger, the one in the cabin, that's what happens when you break the rules, isn't it?" Bill didn't answer. He didn't need to. I swallowed hard. Why not just leave? Why stay? Bill chuckled dryly. "You think we can?" Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. Before I could press further, the old landline phone on his desk rang. A shrill, ear-piercing ring that made my breath catch. Bill's face paled. Neither of us moved. The phone kept ringing. I didn't know why, but some primal instinct told me not to answer it. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Silence. Bill exhaled slowly, rubbing his face. "Yeah, you should probably go back to your station." I shook my head. "I'm not going back out there. You don't have a choice." His words sent ice through my veins. The path that shouldn't exist. I didn't drive back. I walked. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid my truck wouldn't start. Maybe some part of me knew I was already in too deep. The trail stretched ahead, winding through dense, unmoving trees. But the farther I walked, the more I noticed something wrong. The forest was different. The trees didn't look familiar, even though I'd taken this path before. The air felt heavier, like I was walking through water. The colors were off, like everything had been desaturated just slightly. Then I saw it. A second path. It cut sharply to the left, where there hadn't been a trail before, and standing at the entrance was a ranger. His uniform was identical to mine. His posture was stiff, his arms hanging limply at his sides, and his face, smooth, empty, blank, a faceless ranger. I froze. He lifted his arms slowly and pointed down the path. The meaning was clear. Come this way. Every nerve in my body screamed no. I took a shaky step backward. The faceless ranger tilted his head, like he was listening to something. Then, in a garbled, static-filled voice, he spoke. Come see. It's waiting. A sound echoed from the path. Distant, wet, like something breathing. I turned and ran. The thing that called my name. Branches slashed at my arms as I sprinted back toward the station, my breath ragged. My boots pounded against the dirt, my vision blurring. I didn't dare look back. I reached the station just as the sun began to set, throwing long, claw-like shadows across the clearing. My chest heaved as I threw the door open and locked it behind me. For a moment, nothing. Silence. Then a knock. Not from the door. From the window. Slowly, dreading what I would see, I turned. A face stared at me. My face. It was me. An exact copy. Except the eyes weren't right. They were too dark. Too empty. Then, my own voice whispered from the other side of the glass. Let me in. I stumbled backward, my pulse roaring in my ears. It smiled. The same expression I'd seen in the mirror 1,000 times, now twisted into something wrong. Then it raised a single hand and knocked 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. I turned off the lights and waited. Outside, the thing wearing my face never stopped smiling. The final rule. The thing outside the window didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe. It only smiled. I pressed my back against the wall, gripping the flashlight in my trembling hands as if it would do anything against the horror standing outside. My own face, but not mine. And then, in a voice that perfectly mimicked my own, it whispered, You can't stay in there forever. A shiver rolled through my spine. The knock came again. Knock, knock, knock. I shut my eyes, trying to steady my breath. The rules. I had to remember the rules. Ignore any voice that mimics someone you know. The copy of me pressed its hand against the glass, fingers splaying out unnaturally, like the bones inside weren't quite human. It whispered again, You already broke the rules. My stomach lurched, because it was right. I had spoken to Bill outside of my shift. I had investigated the other ranger's cabin. And worst of all, I had seen it. The faceless one. And now it had seen me. The air inside the station grew thick, suffocating. My lungs burned as I forced myself to breathe. Then, a sound from behind me. The radio. A garbled, static-filled voice rasped through the speaker. You are not supposed to be here anymore. I turned toward the radio in horror, and that's when I heard the door unlock. Not by my hand. The lock turned by itself. My pulse skyrocketed. The door handle trembled, like something was testing it, waiting, and then, with the slow creak of old hinges, it began to open. What happens to those who stay? I lunged forward, slamming the door shut with all my strength, pressing my weight against it. My heart thundered as I fumbled for the lock, but it was ice cold to the touch, refusing to budge. From the other side, the voice came again, my voice. Come outside. You don't belong in there. A whisper slithered through the room, curling around me like cold breath against my ear. You belong to the forest now. I squeezed my eyes shut. No, I wouldn't listen. I wouldn't. Then I made the worst mistake yet. I opened my eyes and looked down. At my hands. At the skin that was no longer mine. My fingers were losing definition, smoothing out like wax under heat. The creases in my palms were fading. The lines of my knuckles were vanishing. I was going faceless. A ragged gasp tore from my throat. I stumbled back, shoving my hands into my jacket like I could stop it, like I could undo what had already begun. But the truth was sinking in. Bill had been right. You don't get to leave. Because once you see them, once they choose you, you become them. One last chance. My eyes darted around the station. There had to be something, some way out. The handbook. The damn handbook. I scrambled toward the desk, yanking open drawers, tossing aside maps and old reports until my fingers brushed the worn cover of the rulebook. I flipped through the pages frantically. The rules. There had to be one last rule. Something, anything, and then I found it. A single line at the bottom of the page. If you've broken the rules, you have only one option left. I swallowed hard. Find the tower before sunrise. If you don't, you will never leave. The tower. I had seen it once in the distance. A skeletal structure deep in the woods, its signal light barely visible through the trees. It was my only chance. I grabbed my flashlight, my jacket, my keys, anything I could carry, and threw the door open before I could second-guess myself. And I ran. The forest won't let me go. The woods stretched endlessly ahead, twisted and unfamiliar under the moonlight. The trees felt closer, their branches reaching like hands, their trunks shifting when I wasn't looking. The forest was alive, and it knew I was trying to escape. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't stop. The tower had to be close. It had to be. A shadow moved to my right. Tall, still, faceless. Then another, and another. They were everywhere, emerging from the trees, from the darkness, from nowhere. The whispering returned, rising in a chorus. Join us. You were chosen. It's too late. I sprinted. Branches slashed at my arms. Roots curled around my ankles, trying to pull me down. My flashlight flickered, the battery gasping its final breath. Then I saw it. The tower, rising from the trees, metal rusting, its red warning light blinking like a heartbeat. I pushed forward, lungs heaving, arms pumping. The whispers grew louder, the faceless ones closing in. 50 feet. A shadow loomed ahead. 40 feet. The ground seemed to stretch, the distance growing instead of shrinking. 30 feet. The thing from my window stepped onto the path. My copy. It smiled. And then, as if mocking me, it whispered, "Run faster." I lunged past it, feeling its breath, my breath on my neck. 10 feet. I hit the ladder. I climbed. I climbed like my life depended on it. Because it did. Below, the faceless ones gathered, their heads tilted up, their featureless faces turned toward me. But they didn't climb. They just watched. I reached the top, gasping, pulling myself onto the platform. And then, the first light of dawn broke over the trees. A golden line across the horizon. The whispers stopped. The faceless ones melted into the shadows. And I was alone. The last rule. I don't remember how long I sat up there, staring at the trees, waiting for something to come back. But nothing did. The forest was quiet again. And when I finally climbed down, the path to my truck was clear. I drove without stopping. I didn't look back. When I reached the outpost, Bill was gone. The station was empty. The only thing left was the handbook, lying open on the desk. The final rule was now underlined in red ink. If you've broken the rules, you have only one option left. And beneath it, a new line had been written. You made it out, but the forest never forgets. I don't know if I escaped. Not really, because sometimes, at night, when everything is quiet, I hear a knock on my window. Knock, knock, knock. And when I check the glass, I see my own face, smiling. The end.